Okay, everybody, welcome to the Computer Science Industry Mixer. We are just about to get going here. And I just would like to, I've got an email here that says, okay, yes, you're good to go. So first of all, my name is Sue Bertram. I am the Associate Dean of Science for Recruitment and Retention. And part of my job with that is working with the Science Student Success Center. So the Science Student Success Center team asked me if I'd come in and do this welcome event. So I'd like to welcome you all. First of all and foremost, what I'd like to do is to thank all the professionals for taking the time to come to our event, especially in the middle of a pandemic and because things had to be online. This event has provided so many different wonderful opportunities for students to connect with professionals in their field of interest. And in so doing has gained new insights, has allowed them to gain new insights on their future career paths. So we really do thank you for your time and energy putting forward with this. So this evening, 4 professionals are going to be joining us from different companies, some of whom are alumni from Carleton. But to kick things off, what I'd like to do first is to introduce Tobias. Now, Tobias Schlagenhofer is here to be our MC for the night. He's in his 3rd year of computer science, and he also has a minor in business at Carleton University. He's had 3 co-op turns at Solus and Syntronic, and he's also been featured on Carleton Newsroom for creating Hourglass, a Chrome extension that helps students and anyone working from home keep track of their time online. And if you want, you can download it on the Chrome store or at gethourglass.co. And he's also been a mentor at the Science Student Success Center for 2 years now and will be hosting tonight's event. Please join me in welcoming Tobias. Take it away, sir.
Thanks for the introduction, Sue. So hello, everyone, and welcome to the Computer Science Industry Mixer. I'm going to start off by explaining how this event is going to go. So over the course of 4 rounds, I'll be asking each of our panelists one question. And after those rounds, the event will be opened up for a Q&A, where people in the audience can submit a question with the Q&A button at the bottom. And we're also going to record this event and post on See You Learn. So yeah, without any further ado, I'd like to welcome our first guest, John Howitt. He's a principal developer in algorithms and business applications at Kinaxis. John, could you introduce yourself a bit?
Hi, thanks, Tobias. So my name is John Howitt. I'm as Tobias said, a software developer at Kinaxis. I've been with Kinaxis for about 5 years. Prior to working at Kinaxis, I was actually an instructor at Carleton in the School of Computer Science, where I taught discrete math, intro to CS 1 and 2, as well as cryptography. So my career has kind of been a combination of both the academic side as well as the industry side, and that's something that I've really enjoyed. It's allowed me to see the best of both worlds. Before I was at Carleton as an instructor, I was a postdoc at Queen's after finishing my PhD in computer science at Carleton in 2012. So definitely a lot of variety in my career, but I've really been able to get the best of both worlds. I love working on really complicated research level problems, and that's something that I've been able to find, obviously, both at a university as well as in academia.
Okay, yeah, thanks, John. Next up, we have Avery Vine. He's a localization software engineer at Apple. And for anyone that wasn't here last year, we had Avery running this event. So welcome, Avery, and it's nice to have you back. Avery, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, happy to be back. Yeah, so my name is Avery Vine. I graduated from Carleton with a degree in computer science at the end of the 2019-2020 year. And I went straight to working at Apple. So I work as a localization software engineer. So I partake in anything to do with Apple's products being used and distributed and sold in other countries, other regions, other languages. So I have I get to see a little bit of everything that goes out the door from Apple, and I get to be a part of and make an impact on a lot of people's lives. Before I joined Apple, while I was at Carleton, I did a co-op term with TravelClick, and which was a hotel software solutions company. And then I did 2 co-op terms following that with TripAdvisor, once doing some back-end server development and then once on their iOS application.
Cool. Okay, thanks, Avery. And next up, we have Shimina Galani. She's a full stack developer at Raven.ai and also an alumni of Carleton and the SSSC. So Shimina, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. So hi everyone, I'm Shimina. So as Tobias said, I am a full stack developer at Raven.ai. So Raven is a small startup. We're in Hindenburg. It's only about 30 people, and we focus on automating data collection and analysis from manufacturing factories, just to help improve their efficiency. So I've been at Raven for only about 1.5 years now. It's my first job after graduating from Carleton. I was in software engineering with a minor in business, and I was also part of the co-op program.
Cool. All right. So last but not least, we have Jean-Sylvain Sormany. He's a studio head at Snowed-In Studios. Jean-Sylvain, would you mind telling us a little bit more about yourself?
Yes, thank you, Tobias. So I'm Jean-Sylvain. I'm studio head at Snowed-In Studio, which is basically the largest game developer studio in Ottawa. My day-to-day role is to manage all the operations, from hiring to technical evaluations to studio operation, like client work and supervising the productions. I'm the outsider here since I didn't graduate from Carleton University, but I did teach for about 10 years at the university, both in the computer science program and the IMD program at some point. And that's it in a nutshell.
Great. All right, so let's get started. All right, so for our first round, the first question will go to John Howat. And the question is, what is a typical day for you like at Kinaxis, and kind of what adjustments have you made with COVID?
Sure, yeah, so I really like one aspect of my job that I really like is, so Kinaxis is focused on supply chain planning. That's what we do for our customers. We help them plan their supply chains in the best way possible. And this is a great combination of both, traditional software development where, I'm sitting down and writing code, but also of algorithm design and data structure design and applying those things. And the unique thing about this position is it is both very business and customer facing. So you develop deep knowledge of supply chains and how to plan them, as well as, getting to do the more traditional programming. So a typical day for me involves not only doing that sort of coding type exercise, but also spending a lot of time on the phone, interacting with customers, gathering requirements from them, getting feedback from them on what I've designed, and stuff like that. So that really helps me sort of rest assured that the stuff that I do, the code that I write, has an impact day to day, because I'm talking to a customer the next day about that code that I wrote, and whether they like it or think it can be improved a little bit. So a lot of my focus day to day is on that type of software development, both developing new features as well as fixing bugs. And then the rest would be, as you spend more and more time at a company, you take more and more active role in mentoring other developers, helping onboard people, conducting interviews, and that sort of like technical mentorship. So that would be the other main aspect that I'm involved in day to day. So yeah, most of my days are a combination of those tasks.
Okay, cool. So similar question for Shimina. Could you go through kind of a typical day for you at Raven.ai?
Sure. So nowadays with remote work, I have stand-ups at 10 a.m. every day. So that's basically when I wake up, like 5 minutes before, and then we're ready to go. So, we have our regular stand-up, everyone gives kind of their updates, and we also have like a fires board for urgent matters. With being in a startup, it's a small team of people, so any like urgent fires that come up, we're kind of all rallied together to work on those sorts of things. So if I'm working on fires, I'm working on fires. If not, then just working on my regular sort of tasks. I do a lot of independent work nowadays, especially being remote, and a lot more meetings than I was used to before. Usually, I would just run into the other room and chat with my other team members. Now it's like, oh, time for another call. But, so that sort of thing. I'm usually just building features, whether it's on the front end or on the back end, or I also do a lot of like support sort of tickets, because we have these devices where you have to apply configuration. So it's small scripts and just to update those quickly. And I like to do those between builds and this and that. So as a full stack and in a startup, it's basically just chaos and working on anything and everything, which is fun.
And sort of what's been your favorite part about working remotely?
My favorite part is definitely wearing pajamas and taking a nap during lunch. That's ideal.
Okay, cool. So third question is for Avery. As someone, like personally, I started a co-op, in the midst of the pandemic, kind of starting remotely. So I have to ask, what was your experience onboarding with Apple virtually?
Yeah, that's a great question. It wasn't exactly the ideal experience because, of course, if something can go wrong, it won't go wrong. And in my case, my work laptop didn't show up for about a week. So I spent my first day screen sharing into an extra laptop that my manager had lying around his house, just so I could learn about what was going on with the products. And then I ended up partitioning a personal Mac just so I could do something for a little bit. But overall, it was actually not that bad of an experience. I happened to actually start at the same time approximately as two other people on my team. So the three of us were able to share knowledge and talk together. And it was actually a really great experience because we could sort of fill in the gaps in each other's knowledge. And it was interesting, especially because my team is localization, we have people from around the world, of course, on the team. So the two people I started with are in Mexico and Germany. So that was a really fun experience as well.
Okay, yeah, interesting. So yeah, on the flip side for JS, for Jean-Sylvain, I want to ask, like, because you're in charge of the studio at Snowden, what's been your approach to growing the studio during the pandemic?
We've actually grown quite a bit during the pandemic. I think we've had something like 35 or 40 people in the last year, which means that, well, interestingly enough, we didn't have to worry about the space. So right now we have more staff than we have actually desks in the office. So it's going to be an interesting challenge at the end of this pandemic, and we'll have to return to the office. Of course, the challenge is mentoring. People come into the office, and usually a lot of knowledge is happening through osmosis. You're sitting beside someone that knows the answers, and basically they share with you when they realize that you're struggling. In order to counterbalance that, we've basically established a buddy system in the office where everyone is paired with a programmer that does similar tasks and can just ask him at any time. They are paired together. We also have installed like Discord channel where like it's basically open room and people can just chat within that room if they want. So they can jump in and just check if there's someone. This has been popular with some of our teams. There's also like a stronger emphasis on the one-on-one. So the leaders will spend more time spent on one-on-one with the employee. We are putting a lot of efforts in the technical mentorship. So the tech leads will spend more time also doing like the proper code review. We're putting a lot of emphasis on those moments where you can spend together. Of course, we have also the daily scrum and everything that helps to facilitate the communication. But there's a series of tool sets that were put in place during the pandemic in order to make the collaboration work even more effective as we were distant.
Yeah, okay, cool. So, all right, so we'll go into round two. And first question is for Avery. So what is the work culture like at Apple? I think a lot of people would be curious to know sort of what your experience is with that, what lives up to the hype, and what's a little bit different than you expected.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it probably varies somewhat from team to team. My team in particular, and of course this might change, as we approach Big Apple events. I was under the impression that there would be a lot of times where I might have to work a little bit later into the evening or into the weekends in order to sort of make sure we hit critical tasks on time. So far, that actually hasn't been my experience. And my manager and the rest of the team has been actively encouraging, once you finish for the day, you log off, don't check Slack, don't check email, just spend some time to yourself to kind of to recover and to prepare yourself so you can work fully the next day. So that's actually been a pleasant surprise. Of course, the people on my team are really, really brilliant. They're all top-notch engineers, and it's super, super great to learn from them. So that definitely lives up to the hype. I think the work culture has been, especially on my team, has been pretty relaxed, and it's a good environment, especially for someone who this is my first full-time position at a major software company. So this has definitely been a great way to start that experience.
Yeah, and you mentioned just sort of like that work-life balance. Is there any like tools or strategies that you kind of employed or something that helped you out with that?
I've been, if I move slightly out of the way, you can see I've got my work desk behind me there. And I very much try to separate, my work environment from the rest of my life. So when I sit down at that desk, I know that I'm going to be working for X number of hours. And once I leave that desk, I'm not going to be touching work for the rest of the day. So that's actually provided a pretty good sort of mental separation. That's definitely one of the tricks I've been using.
Cool. All right, so next question is for JS. I know a lot of computer science students, they're really passionate about game development like yourself. And I'm wondering, how did you turn that passion into a business, into a successful startup?
It's all about believing and wanting to achieve what you want. Game development is one of the strongest sector in the digital economy. I don't know if you know, but last year the gaming sector did surpass in revenue, well, during the pandemic in revenue, the TV, film, and sports industry combined. So it's an important sector where there's a lot of serious people working. These days, when you're doing a game, it's not rare that you will see like teams of 300 or 400 people, and part of it, half of them are like engineers working on a game. So there's a lot of demands for strong engineers to develop games and push technologies. The challenge is always that we need people that are willing like to relook at the technology and live with like the latest and greatest. The technology evolves so fast. We always want to create the best experience. So making this a business out of that is just being there at the right moment, but there's a strong demand for game developer. And we were basically just seizing the opportunity of like that strong demand. When I came in Ottawa about 15 years ago, there was no real gaming sector, no one like focusing on AAA games or serious games. So we said, let's be that studio. And we assembled like some of the brilliant minds around, and we assembled together and started offering servicing to the game industry. And that's how it turned into like a very good business and a very fast growing business. Now our yearly revenue are around 10 millions. We're still growing very quickly. So it's a good place to be.
And just so you mentioned the explosive growth in the gaming industry right now. Are there any other like changes you've seen over the pandemic because everyone's at home virtually, other than just explosive growth?
Well, there's a stronger engagement also for network games or game that plays together. Just like the first month after the pandemic, Twitch was releasing number. I think it was an increase of 130% over their viewers. Of course, more people were spending more time looking at their screens. Microsoft saw like an engagement in all their network games. So video games we're also playing a role as like replacement for social activities that couldn't happen outside. And people took that opportunity. We see also more games being developed, more people interested in that sector. And we see also a lot more attention put on new technologies like VR, AR, or all those, well, ray tracing is one of the big breakthrough that happened in it through the last couple of years. And there's a lot of research in the next few years to make like games that are like truly impressive.
Yeah, no, I think that brings up a really good point. So next question is for Shimina. What is it that you enjoy or find kind of most rewarding about working in a startup environment or sort of a small enterprise?
There's a lot of really nice things about working in a place that's smaller. Like I said, it's only about 30 people. So if I've probably worked with everyone in the office at least once on some sort of task or project. Everyone's kind of, it's like a family sort of experience, which is really nice. And the thing about having such small teams is that I have a lot more responsibility than I think I would have had somewhere larger. Like I just recently started leading a project, which I didn't think would happen for a really long time, and stuff like that. So that's really cool. The other nice thing is that before remote work, we used to have this thing every Friday where someone would be in charge of catering lunch, and then they would order from wherever they wanted for everyone in the office, and we'd have this like nice little lunchtime on Friday, and we'd go over like things that went well in the week. So that was really lovely. It has obviously changed now where we get like a catered lunch every 2 weeks and we just order it and like eat it by ourselves, which is a little sad, but like, yeah, it's really nice to work so closely with such a small team.
Yeah, and like you said, since it is such a closely knit group of people, is it extra weird now that it's online? You don't get to see those people?
Yeah, it's definitely super weird now. I feel like I don't really talk to people as much anymore. Like you used to just meet people in the kitchen and just chat for a while, eat some snacks, and now it's like, oh, I guess I'll just sit by myself. It is what it is.
Yeah, I found like now it's a lot more just like when the meeting starts, it's just business talk, and then when it ends, it ends. Like when it gets to the time, it's just over. Like there isn't a lot of time to talk about personal stuff. So yeah, it's really weird. Okay, so last question of the round is for John. So like you mentioned, previously you were a teacher at Carleton University, and I'm curious kind of what did you enjoy most about that position, and how did you get involved with Kinaxis?
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting, right? It's not like one of those situations where there's like some clear career path and like there was a single dream job and that's the only thing I could have ever been happy doing. I think I would have been quite happy continuing with that full time. I really enjoyed my year doing that. I think my favorite thing was um, interacting with the students who you could tell had clearly put in an effort, right? They'd come to your office hours with like really well thought out questions. You could tell that they had really tried their best to come up with the solution ahead of time. They'd show you what they tried, and then you could talk about why it didn't work, as opposed to basically just kind of repeating what you said in the lecture, which I'm happy to do, but isn't maybe as satisfying a conversation to have. So that was definitely my favorite part. But fate kind of brought me back to industry. Having spent so much time studying computer science, I sort of developed a natural itch to scratch with doing some of that coding I had spent so many years learning about, applying some of those algorithms that I had spent so many years learning about. I was a term instructor in computer science at the time. So when that term ended, instead of continuing to pursue academic opportunities, I kind of turned to industry. And I had a friend of mine who was working at Kinaxis. He'd been there for maybe a year at the time, and he said, this company's really special. We're doing some really cool things. I think you'd enjoy it. So I took his word on it, and I'm happy to report that he was being honest with me, and I've had a blast since.
Cool, yeah. Okay, so we'll move into the third round of questions. First question is for Shimina. Like you said, you graduated from Carleton Engineering, and my question is, what's something that you took from Carleton Engineering that you use most at work, or that you kind of prepared you for what you're doing day to day?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I wouldn't say that any course particularly like made a huge difference in my career, but it was probably like the general learning of fundamentals slowly throughout the years that helped me a lot. Like it really taught me how to do proper planning and proper design. And I've noticed that that sort of stuff is stuff that takes time, and you can't just learn it at a whim. So having, 4 or 5 years of school definitely brought that in. And the other thing that I found really helpful was co-op. I think co-op made a huge difference as to how like I was learning things and to understand what actually happens in the real world. Like I remember in school, I didn't learn Git till like 3rd year, and I learned it in my first co-op and was like, what is this magical tool you can use to work with other people? So definitely just the progression of years and enjoying my co-op experience was really helpful.
And the next question is for JS. So I'm sure you're kind of a role model to a lot of viewers here. You've kind of grown a really successful startup. So I'd like to know who your biggest role model is, entrepreneurially speaking, or just in general, and how did they shape where you are today?
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't have tendencies to have the same role model that a lot of people. People will admire the big name of this world, the Elon Musk or the people that have achieved so much. For me, my role model are much more humble and modest. I'm having a little bit of difficulty with people that like cherish their own personality and that are like really just about themselves. I like people that think about the other first, and those people have not tendencies to be in front of everyone. But I do have a couple of role models that I've met through my careers at Ubisoft and at other studios where like they were people first people, and that's kind of a sentence or a way of thinking that I've been trying to apply my entire career, putting people first. In a studio, the work and the success of Snowden Studio is not the success of myself. It's the success of all the people that have been working so great under myself. Like we have a team of talented people, from the new hires that came in like just a few months ago, up to the people that stick around for the past like 10 years with us and that have been helping like building that studio. Everyone who are still playing or playing a critical role at the studio. And this is something we try to recognize. So sometimes my role models are basically the people that we've been hiring recently. I see them like striving to success, always wanting to learn, being like eager to progress in their career, and automatically that inspires me, and I want to be a little bit more like them. So it's strange to say, but even like the studio heads sometimes like admire everyone under them and say like, wow, I wish I would be like them. So I find my inspiration in a lot of people surrounding me.
That's really interesting. Next question is for John. So if I understand correctly, a principal developer is someone that works on projects at a higher product level. I know you said you do some coding as well, but what was it that attracted you to that type of role?
Yeah, so I mean, mostly time. When I started at Kinaxis, I was, primarily responsible for developing the smallish features that were, fairly clear in scope. The requirements were solid. It was just a matter of sitting down and doing the work. That didn't necessarily mean it was simple to code. It was still, difficult, complex work, but work that was largely laid out and architected by someone else. And I enjoyed that. I like solving problems. But as time goes on, and especially at a place like Kinaxis where there's so much deep domain knowledge, right? Supply chain is a very broad and deep area with a lot of different concepts to learn, a lot of different vocabulary and jargon to learn. And as you gain expertise in that, or at least as I gained expertise in that, I found that I wanted to tackle problems at higher and higher levels, right? So rather than designing a small, narrow sliver of a feature, to take a more broader architectural view, to work out the algorithm to solve the problem as opposed to just implementing the algorithm someone else had solved. And I would say that's probably one of the key differences between someone more on the junior software developer side, for example, and someone who's progressed a little bit more in their career is that key difference, right? Instead of translating requirements or rather a design into code, you're translating requirements into design. And yes, I'm still, happy to translate that design into code. And I do, spend a significant amount of my time doing that. But by and large, the hard part of my job is not programming. I program, I have to be able to program, but the hard part of my job is definitely problem solving. And I think that's the mark of that kind of title or kind of role in a software development job.
So was it kind of like you got to a role and then got really familiar with it and then would kind of level up and sort of step up? Was that sort of your journey?
Yeah, exactly. And that really speaks to the types of mentorship opportunities you have, right? Being in a position where I could tackle progressively more and more complicated tasks, right? Because it's not just a night and day switch to implementing straightforward features to architecting a hugely complex system, right? If you have a good mentorship program in place, lots of people to talk to, lots of people to learn from, lots of training resources, then you can do that ramp up much more gradually. So, I've been at Kinaxis for coming up on 5.5 years. And over that time, it's been, steadily increasing in terms of both number of responsibilities and complexity of those responsibilities. Not everyone is interested in that, and that's totally fine. The nice thing about a company like Kinaxis is that you're able to switch roles if that's something you're interested in. If you want to move from like the development side to the testing side or the support side or the business side, that's totally within reason. And of course, then there's the other transition you can make, which is more from the individual contributor side to like the people management side is another option. But for me, what I've been interested in so far is largely kind of ramping up on the technical side.
Cool. All right, so the last question for this round will be for Avery. And so having just graduated, so similar questions for Shimina, but having just graduated, what is something that you learned at Carleton Computer Science that you use most at work or kind of something that helps you
out? Yeah, I would definitely echo co-op being a huge thing. Because as much as, there are some courses that try to teach you about about working, what it's like to work with a team and working in a company and those kinds of things. There's just so much that you learn, you as much as they can teach you over the course of a single semester, you'll learn so much more in a week at a real job. So the co-op program was super amazing in that way. I think your data structures and algorithms course, very, very helpful. Getting those fundamentals down pat is definitely super important. I think no matter whether you're looking at a small startup or a huge company like Apple, because those are some of the basics that can help you write some good code. So I definitely say those kinds of things were most important.
Great. Okay, so for our fourth round, first question will go to Shimina. My question is, how did you know that you wanted to be a full stack developer? Was it something that sort of just fell into your lap, or like how did you figure that out?
Yeah, the progression to full stack was quite interesting. When I was in high school trying to like choose a place to go in university, I was like, I like problem solving and math. Software sort of seems like that'll be doing that. And I literally didn't really understand what programming meant. I was just like, oh yeah, computer is cool. Not really the way to go that I would recommend, but that's how I did it. So yeah, then I started in university, and most of my classes taught, back-end programming, and that's all I really saw. And I was like, okay, I mean, like, this is kind of cool, but what else can I do? And then I had a co-op at Ericsson, and I was doing like, a lot of really back-end work that I wasn't enjoying at all. And we all of a sudden had this like team project that was mostly just for fun, like a co-op bonding thing. And part of it was making some sort of little like really easy HTML front end app. And I was charged with doing that part. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, programming is amazing. This is beautiful. And I love this. So as soon as I discovered the front end side, I was like, okay, this is where I want to go. This is where I need to go. And as I developed that personally on the side by myself, because we didn't really have many courses that taught that side of it, I knew that's the direction I wanted to head in. And I did see some roles for simply front end, but I really didn't have enough experience to get those jobs because I was like, teaching myself in a really hacky sort of manner. So I kind of needed some more guidance there. And I saw a lot of full stack roles and I was like, you know what, I like just dipping my fingers into everywhere that I can. So I started just applying and I just saw what happened. And I ended up at Raven doing a bajillion different tasks and it just worked out really well. But it was all kind of just like fluky that, that it happened to be.
Yeah, that's cool. And I'm curious, what was it about like the doing the front end HTML stuff that you found so interesting? Was it like you could problem solve a little bit and then see those things come to life, or what was it about?
Yeah, it was basically that like instant gratification of like, oh, I've made a change and I can see exactly what I've done. And it was so easy for me to grasp. Whereas like the beginning of my time in university when I was just like writing for loops and doing this and that, I was like, I'm not able to see the bigger impact that it's having yet. And it wasn't really clicking until I started doing more things on the front end. But then I was like, oh, you need to do the back end to be able to do the really cool things on front end. So put it together, full stack.
Okay, cool. All right, so our second question is for Avery. What is it that you find most rewarding about your job?
Well, that's a good one. I find something that definitely motivates me at work is knowing that that the stuff I'm working on, the things I'm doing are having an impact on people. So working for a company like Apple means that I'm, touching a lot of people's lives. And especially in something as important as localization, being able to use a product, use technology in your native language is such an important thing. And it's an experience that should be treated with as much care as being able to use something in English. And sometimes it can be a little bit easy to lose sight of that. So being able to work on this team is super rewarding because I know that I'm able to bring this technology to so many people and to share it with so many people. So that's super cool for me.
Right, so it's like the size of the impact. Cool. And I know that you kind of have a niche for iOS and developing apps. Do you have any tips for students trying to find their own niche or sort of their own kind of interest?
I think you've just gotta try things. Even though I didn't actually apply for really any iOS development co-ops as I first started applying in my earlier years at Carleton. And after my first co-op with TripAdvisor, in which I was doing some back-end development, right towards the end, my manager came to me and said, we'd love to have you back. It was really great. We know that you like iOS. And this is because I had been having some conversations with the iOS developer. And they said, would you like to try this? And I totally jumped on the opportunity because it was something I hadn't tried in a professional environment. It's something that I had sort of played around with on the side. And I thought it would appeal to me, and it ended up being a fantastic experience. And I ended up really diving into that. So yeah, definitely, if you want to find a niche, if you want to find something you enjoy, you just have to try as much as you possibly can.
Cool. And was that something you discovered on that co-op term, or was it sort of in school and you like grew it through the co-op?
I did apply for the mobile development stream at Carleton. So I did have a little bit of an idea that it was something I wanted to try. Now the stream only requires and provides a few mobile development specific courses over the course of your degree. So the majority of my experience from that came from work at TripAdvisor. So I had a little bit of an idea that it was something I was interested in, but doing the work with TripAdvisor really solidified that and opened my eyes up to that possibility.
Cool. All right, so third question. is for JS. What's something you wish you'd learned in university, just for our viewers to take away?
Something I wished I would have learned in university, it's a tough one because the university is teaching you how to learn. Essentially, they're giving you the tool sets to be fast learner, to be adaptive. This is for me like the biggest takeaway from university. So when I'm reflecting, and well, I'm considerably older than a lot of you, but like when I'm reflecting 22 years after graduating to the university, I don't feel there's something really missing in my knowledge. Sure, I can identify from new graduated what sometimes missing. Like there's some aspects on technical, but nothing that someone that is eager to learn won't be able to catch as they start working or as they develop their interest. So I would just say the university should make people realize that what you're learning is not necessarily, or what's relevant, it's not necessarily what you're learning, but the process of learning what you're doing right now and getting better in basically absorbing this information, being able to understand it, comprehend it, and basically apply it after. And once you get like into this process and you're really good in this process of just like taking the knowledge and using it to your advantage, then you get all the tool sets you need. So for me, I know it's probably not the answer you're expecting, but I think the university is just there as a tool set, and you should use it like at your advantage because it will give you good starts in life.
No, that's great. I think that's a really great perspective to keep, just because a lot of people tend to focus on the material itself and the courses. So yeah, that's really cool. And on the other side, what was something that you did right out of university that helped get you to where you are today?
Well, obviously I need technical class, and I was like really strong in programming. And when I started my career, I was hired as a programmer. So that's something that I was able to apply right away. I must say that I was also, and that may have been like a tendency that shows where I am right now, but I had tendency to take always the lead role when I could at university. So every project, when there was like a team, I was volunteering to be leading the team, to kind of try to guide them. Of course, it was kind of a seed, but I'm not saying that it's everyone's role. Some people, it's sometimes also perfectly fine to be in the support role and being the person that basically is the team. And I told you earlier in the previous question, I admire some people under me because some of them like are like playing the perfect supporting role. So try to think what you want to do in life. Do you want to be the engine behind the things? Do you really want to be showing like the direction? Do you want to be the smart brain that just comes with the solution at the perfect moment and basically apply toward this? So in my case, of course, the technicalities, and when we're like hiring people, we're evaluating a lot the technical skill set of what they can bring. Because video game is a complex beast, right? You're touching, like we spoke about full stack. I don't think there is nothing that is as full stack as video game development. You need to understand up to the registry, what's happening, up to at the end, like the UI and the UX experience, and how like the player will interact with the player, and everything in between, AI, database, everything that is like involved. So it's demanding for technical people. And if there are some people watching this Facebook Live that wants to go into video game, I would say like apply yourself to be good with the technology, because that's what will give you a lead in the interview process. But after that, trust yourself and trust that people will, your colleagues will help you grow within this industry.
All right, thanks. That was really good advice. Okay, so lastly, to finish things up for our round until we head up to the Q&A, for John, where did your love for big data and analytics come from? I know you've done a lot of research and you spent a lot of time in that area. So where did that come from? And then what advice do you have to students trying to find their own passion out of university?
Yeah, it's a great question. So first, I should clarify that when I say like big data and analytics, I'm not in the like area of data science. That's not really my specialty. My specialty is more in algorithms and data structures that operate on very large data sets. So, I'm not looking at ML techniques. I'm not looking at like data cleansing or anything like that. Those fields are certainly important and obviously very interesting. It's just not what I do. My interest in this area stems largely from my love of algorithms and data structures. I was at Carleton for many years through a bachelor's and master's and a PhD, and later back as an instructor. And I took a lot of these courses, and I always thought that they were really interesting. But I didn't necessarily see how I'd be able to, find the common thread, connect them, find a way to apply them. I, often assumed that, these algorithm courses are either good if you want to go into academia, or they're good if you want to get a software development job and need to do a whiteboarding question. And I didn't necessarily see at the time, other than, a few maybe niche exceptions, how you could apply those day to day. That was not a relief when I came to that realization, and luckily it ended up being false. There are definitely jobs where you can apply these algorithms and data structures on a day-to-day basis. Look at algorithm complexity, look at space complexity, time complexity, and shaving off a log n from that big O really does make a difference in the day-to-day. Those jobs are maybe harder to find. You need to look a bit more carefully for them, but they are definitely out there, and it's just been great to be able to be a part of a position like that.
Great. And sort of lastly, do you have any advice for students trying to find their own passion in university, or sort of, find their niche to go on to?
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely echo what Avery said. Try a lot of stuff. University is the perfect time to do that with co-ops. A lot of people like to, maybe do something on the back end, do something on the front end, try something, completely unrelated, for another position. That's great. I often talk to a lot of people that I'll interview or whatever. When you start applying to jobs on a full-time basis, you want to be able to have a good conversation with your interviewer. And one way to have a good conversation is by trying lots of things in your undergrad studies through co-ops or through any other means. But it's not the only way to have a good conversation. So, if you're not in a co-op program, or, maybe you were doing co-ops and you fell in love with the company, so you had like 3 return offers there for whatever reason, don't really let that pigeonhole you for new grad positions. There's definitely still opportunities to try new things. And if you find yourself interested in a role that really requires and is completely inflexible about those other things, you then kind of want to ask yourself, like, is that really a company I want to work for if they're not even willing to let me try something new as I'm entering? Are they likely to let me try something new, like within the company after a year or two, if I want to try a new role? Is that really the kind of place that you want to be on an ongoing basis? So I would say find a way to try new things. Co-ops are a great opportunity, but they're not the only way of doing it, certainly.
Great. Oh yeah, there's a lot of good advice there. So that's going to conclude our final round of questions, and we'll now open up the Q&A portion of the event. So if anyone has any questions to ask the professionals, type them in the Q&A function at the bottom of the Zoom chat, and I'll be going through those. I'm just going to open these up. All right, so this one's for all panelists, and I'll start with Kshamina. What kinds of side projects, if any, do you have outside of work, and how do you get started in one?
Yeah, I had a few going on during university, not really in the beginning of my time in university, just because I didn't really know what to do or where to go with that. But as I started my love of front end, I knew I had to find a way to teach myself, since not many courses were teaching that. So I started working for an orchestra on the side, and I made their website. It was really bad. It was HTML and CSS only, and it was like a huge learning curve to, deploy all of that and get that stuff set up. But, that was a really fun side project. Right now, since I do a lot of React at work, I'm starting to implement that on random projects just for fun nowadays. So like I'm making, for my sister, I'm making a wedding website for her out of React just for fun. And yeah, I just spend a lot of time programming little projects whenever I feel like it.
Mhm. Great. Yeah. Avery, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, definitely. Especially after I started my second internship with TripAdvisor doing the iOS development, I found that I was super passionate about iOS development all of a sudden, and I need to do more. So I started working on, my sister came to me with a request for a plant care app. And she found that none of the ones at the App Store really met her needs. So I decided I would tackle that. And that ended up actually teaching me a huge amount about iOS development, even outside of the stuff that I was doing at work every day. I think getting started on side projects, it's a little bit different for everyone, but you won't be able to follow through with a side project if you're not passionate about it. So I would definitely say, think about something that you would really use in your daily lives, and see if you can, maybe it's a problem you can solve with code, and then go about trying to solve it. I think that's my advice on how to get started with side projects.
Great. Okay, so I'll address this next one to John. Did you ever consider working in the government since we're in Ottawa? Did it ever go through your mind?
I mean, yeah, I considered it because yes, I am in Ottawa, and it's hard to ignore the government as an employer. Most of the positions I've had, one way or another, have come through networking, right? So I got my start in academia by being an undergrad TA for a few terms, and talking to professors, and then getting to know them and getting invited in their lab. And then, after my PhD, I, had met a professor at Queen's, so I decided to go work there. And all of those jumps from position to position have been networking based. And I just haven't had, maybe just randomly, I haven't had a connection in the government sort of pique my curiosity about a role there. I'm certainly not saying they don't exist. I do know a lot of very smart people who work at the government on things that seem interesting, but no, that's not something I've come across. I'm not opposed to it, but it's not something I've come across.
All right, so this next one I'll address to JS, because you mentioned hiring some people and growing your team a lot. So how do you know when you have enough technical skills to get a co-op? Yeah, what were your thoughts on that?
I would suggest that anyone that is interested in a co-op, and anywhere you are interested in a co-op, get to meet some people working at this workplace to understand what they do and what's the technical challenge they're living. One of the first job I got, I registered to public event. Well, it may not be as easy in COVID time, but there's a way to connect with the people in the industry and basically ask them what they need to know in order to do their job properly. Get yourself interested in the company. Try to understand what the company is doing, what's the day-to-day life of a developer at that company, and try to understand what's the technical requirement of those people by asking those questions. Once you got an interview with some of the people that are actually on the floor, you'll get a pretty much clear vision of what's required to be working there. And they will gladly help you, like I'm sure all of our employees, and I'm sure it's true also for anyone in this panel, that they will be happy to share what they need to know in order to succeed in their respective studios or companies. So my advice is, get out of the shy zone, go ask the people, ask the question of what they need. Not only you will have like the tool sets to understand what skill set that you need, but also you will have a foot in the companies because you'll already have connections within. And if this connection is serious, people will be gladly pushing your resume to the HR pile. And it's much more successful when the resume comes from the inside than when it's just coming from a generic HR mailing list.
That was really great. All right, so I'll circle back to Shimina. What's your perspective on continuous career growth versus contentment in life?
Ooh,
kind of a deep one.
Deep question. I mean, especially as someone who's super early in my career, I've definitely thought, there have definitely been times where I've sacrificed some things just to get projects done instead of, living my life and going to sleep on time. But, having that balance is super important just because I noticed when I started to do that sort of thing, despite how much I was enjoying my job, you're gonna get burnt out. So you have to make sure you maintain that balance. Like I was really having a good time on some of the projects I was working on, and like working late into the evening, and I was like, oh yeah, this is awesome. But then like after like even a week or two of that, you're like, oh man, this is getting rough, and like your work's not going to be as good of quality. So there's always a thing of you should always be learning on the job and learning continuously, but you just have to remember that you got to keep that balance and not sacrifice, what's keeping you happy in life, and maintain those hobbies, exercise, sleep, eat good foods, all that good stuff.
Cool. Yeah. Avery, did you want to add something onto that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit difficult for me to offer perspective on that because I'm so new. I'm just starting things. So right now, in my eyes, career growth is, of course, a target. I want to learn as much as I possibly can, accumulate knowledge, be able to be a source of knowledge for other people, and continue to try new and fun projects at my work. So definitely, I'm leaning more into the career growth side of things. But I know eventually there'll come a point where I sort of take my foot off the gas a little bit and sit back and enjoy the ride. I don't think I'm anywhere near that point yet. I'm definitely eager to keep learning.
Great. Okay. And John, I mean, being in the industry a little bit longer, what are your thoughts on sort of, keeping that contentment, but also managing the career growth?
Yeah, so for me, work-life balance is incredibly important. I have been in those crunch times in the past. It's not something that happens frequently, luckily, because it's something that I care about strongly, my manager cares about strongly, and the company as a whole care about strongly. But yes, it can be difficult to detect when you're in it until it's too late sometimes. And you definitely do start to feel it. So it's really important to take time for yourself. And when you're thinking about the way that you want your career to develop, the direction in which you want it to grow, make sure that's compatible with what you want to get contentment in life. If you're, not really interested in doing like people management, for example, right? You don't have to move into that role if you don't want to, right? A lot of people consider that to be the natural progression through their career. You do some development for a while, maybe you do some, a development lead role for a while, and then you transition to a people manager. That is an example of career growth, but it's not the only example of career growth. If you're really passionate in doing that, it is an interesting area for sure, and it definitely adds a lot of value, then by all means pursue it. But if the thought of leaving the code behind is something that stresses you out and makes you sad, then don't have that as part of your career plan. A lot of companies will give you the opportunity to try it out. I know I've had several cases that I've seen where a really strong developer has transitioned into a management role, and then 6 months later just decided, you know what, I really don't like this, it's not for me. And luckily in those cases, they've been able to transition back to kind of the senior developer role that they're more comfortable with. So I'm not saying, don't try it. Ideally, try to find a place that will allow you to try it if that's something you're interested in, but just make sure that your career growth goals are compatible with that contentment.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. JS, did you have anything that you want to add to that?
Well, I would just say that when you start your careers, as Kamisha and Avery mentioned, like we're expecting as like companies that people will grow. If people are like content from like the first year and don't move, and they may not last super long. Like even if they're good, we are still expecting junior to be learning, growing within an organization and things like that. And this is the curve where you're learning a lot. And at some point you reach a point where you have enough knowledge to be the mentor for other people. You have enough knowledge to be playing a support role in your team. And at that point, it's a question of ambition. If you are good at what you're doing, you're a senior developer, you're doing a great job, you can probably stay at that role, and the company will appreciate you a lot. We appreciate the people that doesn't necessarily have the ambitions to replace me in 5 years, or to be like the next like star in the company. Not everyone has to reach that, and that's fine. It's really a question, it's more like personal ambition. Do you want to have like a more influential role? Do you want to be in training? And for some people, that's super important. For other people, and sometimes it comes with family's obligation too. You have a family, you have other obligation. You want to do like the strict minimum for doing your job, and that's perfectly fine. So my answer to this is continuous career growth is super important when you start, and it fades away as you reach a certain number of years of experience. And that number is anywhere between 7 and 15 years. At some point, you reach a point where you are the experts enough to say, even if I don't grow anymore, I can still bring a lot of value to those companies and be like this super appreciated resource.
Cool, very interesting, thank you. So this question is for Shimina. Did you find it tough doing your degree as a woman? How is it now? And do you have any advice for women in computer science or engineering?
Ooh, very interesting question. Yeah, I definitely did find it hard when I was in university. Mostly because like there was probably 5 girls maybe and like 60 guys, so your whole class is a little bit uneven. It can be a little bit intimidating, you know. This was probably a personal feeling for me where I felt like maybe I wasn't smart enough, or like, why am I even here? Like maybe I'm not as good or as smart as the guys. And I know a lot of people around me were learning things a lot faster, and it just felt like, you know, I was learning things super slowly and just couldn't get it, and was very shy and not wanting to speak out. My biggest advice is, you know, don't worry about any of that. I felt really stupid a lot of my time in university, and honestly, you'll just learn as you go. Even if it seems like everyone else is super smart and getting everything right away, like everyone's having their own struggles, and you know, you just gotta find a good group of people to work with and be your friends, and that will support you and let you feel like you can talk and not be worried to be judged about your opinion or the questions you ask. I spent a lot of time being afraid to even ask questions or do anything or say anything, because I didn't want people to be like, oh man, girl, she's so dumb in the engineering. But it's okay. It all works out in the end, and you just got to keep at it, be perseverant. Yeah.
Great, thanks for that. All right, so if there's any other questions.
Can I just add something, Tobias, to what Kamisha just said?
Of course.
By experience, we know that for having interviewed so many people, guys are really, really good to be assertive about what they don't know. And that's sometimes part of the problem, is that like Kamisha was saying, like, I feel dumb. The reality is that the guy is as dumb as you are. They're just good in faking that they're not. And that's something you realize quickly. And even for that reason, like in studio like ours, we have like a positive discrimination policies where like at equal talents, like or like even like slightly better performance in the interview, we're gonna most likely take the woman, because they're just basically, we know that they just are not as good as faking their way through the interviews.
Yeah, that's a really good point. All right, so that's going to wrap up the Q&A session. From the Science Student Success Center and myself, I really want to thank our professionals for making the time to come speak at our event. It was an amazing opportunity to learn about careers in computer science. And yeah, so thank you guys all for coming. If you enjoyed the event, please check out our website, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram to see more. And thank you guys all for coming. We hope you enjoyed the night.